Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Skift Travel Podcast. I am Skift's editor-in-chief, Sarah Kopit, and today I have somebody new with me. Well, not really new if you are used to listening to Skift podcasts, but it is not my trusty fellow co-host, Seth Borko. Today I have Darin Graham, who is our climate reporter and who also has a new podcast called GreenShift, where he dives into everything travel, climate, and everything that comes with that. So Darin, how you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I am doing well, but I am here in the Catskills, actually, in upstate New York, where it is kind of lovely and cool. But the last time I talked to you, you were sitting in the dark with all of the lights off because it was just so hot in Europe.
Yeah,
What, what is today's status?
it's still hot. We've had days and days and almost 2 weeks now of very hot weather in London, where temperatures are around 32 degrees Celsius. Forgive me, I don't know the Fahrenheit. But yeah, it's been really hot and we're not so accustomed to aircon. So the next best thing is to close the blinds, close the curtains, keep everything dark and as cool as possible. And it's even worse in Southern Europe. And we've been covering some of that on Skift this week.
Yeah, so for all of our American listeners, I had to, go on my trusty iPhone and convert. So it's in the 90s in London. So if you don't have AC, that's especially terrible. We had a big heat wave in New York City, not last week, but the week before, and we had rolling brownouts actually in Brooklyn, where we got a text message from Con Edison that said they were decreasing power by, I think, 5% across the board. And we could tell all of our lights went to about, maybe 50% of their brightness. But it didn't just take my air conditioner down 5%. It made it so it wouldn't cool and it would chug. And I have a plant on the top of one of my window units and it actually fell off. I thought it might have broken, but it was all okay when the power went back up to normal. But it was just interesting to me how just what the effect of that is and how it might impact, especially people in vulnerable populations who might be, in New York in high-rise buildings, maybe the elderly, you don't have, cross ventilation or airflow in some of our older buildings in New York, which we have a lot of. So it's just, it's a thing.
I think it's really interesting how in a city like New York, how the impacts on the electricity grid of heat like that, when obviously lots of people are using aircon and businesses and offices and hotels and what have you. And I just think that if the predictions for the future are going to come to light with rising temperatures around the world, cities like New York, this is something we could see more and more with these energy constraints and limits on aircon use. And even potentially, in some countries already, they're having scheduled blackouts during the day in peak times. So you might have 4 hours without any energy, any electricity, so that everybody can have a chance to have some during the day. And and there are warnings from everybody, like the International Energy Agency, which monitors electricity and energy around the world, have constantly warned about how aircon use is going to put a strain on our energy grids. I think every year the conversation is just ramping up about this. And it's just, it's interesting to watch when you see it happen in a place like New York, isn't it?
Is it going to be the new luxury? Because at least for us in the United States, it's very much not. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity for many, many people. So
we've never really needed it in the UK. It's not a place where you need aircon that much. But actually, I've been thinking, do we get one? Because, and I feel bad because of the emissions that are tied to it. But then we are on a renewable energy contract as well. But, still. but then it's like, how do you even? I mean, we wouldn't even know. Like, where would it go? Like, flats and houses aren't really built for it. Like, where do they have it in New York? Is it in the window? Like,
Yes, it's in the window, it's ugly, and it's loud. And it's really interesting because you can go through like these beautiful old brownstone apartments in New York City that are, I mean, they're gorgeous. They're decorated by the world's, foremost designers. But we do not have central air conditioning in our, 100-plus-year-old brownstones. And so everybody has these like awful window units that you stick in the window. And yeah, that's what we do. And we generally only put them in the bedrooms to sleep. That's generally how it works because we tough it out in the rest of the house and they go in the bedrooms for sleeping.
so that's why when I speak to people in New York lately, they're doing meetings from their bedroom.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
That is absolutely right. You heard it here first, Europeans. That's how it works. So, all right. So, Darin, what we're going to do this week, we're going to do something a little bit different. For all of you who are used to listening to Seth and I doing the travel podcast, we are going to give you an opportunity to hear a little bit about what Darin is doing on his podcast. It's very exciting. It's called GreenShift. It's excellent, excellent, excellent. So, Darin, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about, what they're about to hear, the episode that we're going to air for them.
So this episode was actually the first episode of GreenShift, and it was basically I went to go and visit Radisson's first NetZero hotel, and it opened up in Manchester a few weeks ago. And the chief sustainability officer, Inge Huberts, met me there, and she gave me a tour of the hotel and explained what makes it net zero, and they reduced emissions in the hotel basically as close to zero as possible through using renewable energy and heat pumps on the roof for heating and cooling. And they just changed the whole food menu to make it as carbon efficient as possible. And we also spoke about some more serious questions. Well, that isn't serious, but some more detailed questions, such as, how did they get investment for something like this, and how do they see it ramping up in the future? Because like many travel companies, they have a net zero policy to become net zero by 2050. So it's like they've got hundreds and thousands of properties and hotels and rooms around the world that they need to try and get there. So I just thought it would be an interesting episode to share, as it covers so many different areas and so many different issues that probably come up throughout the travel business.
All right. Well, everyone, get ready. You're going to hear Darin and GreenShift right now.
At Skift, we cover travel by looking at how its different parts, airlines, hotels, and tourism intersect and evolve. We've long focused on strategy, tech, and marketing. Now we're adding another layer, climate. This is GreenShift, a podcast about how travel is responding to the climate crisis with real stories from across the industry. And this week, net zero hotels.
We have a lot of buildings that we need to convert and make ready for the future.
With food still a bit of a work in progress, what does it mean to be part of a supply chain into a net zero hotel?
After planes, hotels are some of the biggest emitters in travel. With new climate laws looming, most major hotel brands have committed to hitting net zero by 2050. That means cutting nearly all greenhouse gas emissions and offsetting the small bit that's left. But is it even possible today? And what does a net zero hotel actually look like? Radisson says it's open too, one in Oslo and one in Manchester, both verified by the Science Based Targets initiative. These hotels use renewable energy, but the bigger emissions still come from supply chains, food, laundry, and waste. I went to Manchester in the UK to see it for myself and met Radisson's Chief Sustainability Officer, Inge Huberts.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see
You look very well.
I'm going to start on the roof.
Go for the roof.
Let's go for the roof.
Nice view up here of the skyline.
Not available for a party place here, but
Not for cocktails.
not for cocktails.
Well, how would you describe what we're looking at? It's just a big
We're
machine.
looking at the big boxes here with lots of intelligence that is going to make sure that we no longer use gas in this hotel,
Yeah.
not for hot water and not for heating, that everything runs on electric. So they are heat pumps like people could have at home. Actually, you have home-based heat pumps, but they're just bigger, much bigger. And then the electricity that is used is actually 100% renewable through a green utilities contract. So a heat pump takes heat out of the air, transfers it to a refrigerant, compresses that, and that compression then generates heat for the hotel. But for a big hotel, the hotel has 252 rooms, 7 meeting rooms. It's not a small hotel.
It's massive.
Yeah.
So that's not just water, it's also heating, like the central heating.
Correct.
And are these very expensive? Like, why don't more hotels use them?
Of course, the point is, it is an investment to electrify a hotel because it's not necessarily reducing the energy use. It's just shifting from one energy source, which is fossil, to a non-fossil energy source. It's not like you're doing this to become massively more efficient. So that is, of course, the consideration to make. There is an investment that the company is also doing because we believe in proving that NetZero, verified NetZero can be done. And we also want to prove that we can really actually attract more revenue, generate more revenue through it because of the corporate clients, because of the clientele.
And will you save money through having more efficient heating and heat pumps?
The thing is, of course, all buildings by 2050 need to decarbonize, right? Every building. And 80% of the buildings that need to decarbonize by 2050, 80% are already built. So that means that we have a lot of buildings that we need to convert and make ready for the future. And this building, by this investment, is ready for the future. It's future-proofing the asset value of the building by making it net zero today, by bringing the future forward, by saying we're taking the requirements of 2040 and we're doing that now.
Yeah. So there's no, like some hotels that are trying to use renewables might have like solar panels on the roof.
Yes, they might. I mean, but here, everything on the roof, it's not so much roof space. So with the space that we had here, for example, typically, if you would fill this with solar panels, this space here that you see, then you would maybe cover 2% of the hotel's energy use.
But obviously that depends on where the hotel is, because not everywhere will have that option.
But I agree that not everywhere can you procure or even install on hotels renewable energy.
Every region, every district will have different policies and
it's a
things that you
different
need
approach
to...
for every hotel.
Yeah.
And we could do it here, we can do it in Oslo, we can do it in many places. I would certainly look at on-site solar for the bigger spread out resort hotels, or typically where we have more landscaping. Like if you go in emerging markets, you typically have a perimeter, you have more landscaping, you can do more. But every national context is different in terms of renewable energy.
So shall we move inside?
Let's move, yeah.
Thanks for that.
Enough of the technical.
We left the roof and headed to a guest room. On the way, I met Kevin Whiteford, the hotel's operations director. He told me the hotel is going to be called the Radisson NetZero Hotel.
It's not something that Radisson have in the UK currently. So to be the first net zero hotel in the UK, or the first net zero hotel within Radisson Hotel Group, I think that's a bit of a privilege. And it's quite exciting as well.
And it's going to be in the title of the hotel.
Yes.
What do you think of that?
I think it's good for communication, and it's good for letting our guests know, you know, it's all about changing the name to Radisson Hotel Manchester, but I think the project's important, and it's important to highlight the project. The wrong building.
Happened to me yesterday. I was standing with my key card in front of 601 and it was like, why can't I get in until I realised I was on the wrong floor. Okay. So
what are we looking at?
Looking at a refurbished Radisson hotel room, right? With everything what we will do here is to take out the collateral. Of course, also avoiding single-use plastics is part of the Scope 3 emissions.
Scope 3 emissions are some of the most challenging to reduce for a hotel. These are indirect emissions that occur throughout a company's supply chain, including the carbon footprint of producing plastic, soaps, furniture, waste, and other goods. There's also Scope 1 and 2. Scope 1 emissions are direct greenhouse gas emissions from the sources the company owns or controls, like fuel burned in hotel vehicles or gas used in boilers. Scope 2 emissions mainly come from things like purchasing energy from the electricity grid from fossil fuel-based providers.
Our waste management partner are also doing a waste audit to make sure that we maximize recycling. So that is a key portion, because waste is 4% of the footprint of the hotel. So we will go digital on our Stay app, which is that all the guests will actually be invited to interact with the hotel team on this e-concierge app, where we will explain NetZero, but also where they can ask amenities on request. So for example, everything to do with laundry will not be hanging in the room, so not all these bags and papers for laundry, but people will request it. And then the other thing you will notice is that there are no other additional what we call dry amenities. So that may be the cotton pads, toothbrush, in case people forget, right? So what we do is we'll have those on request on the Stay app.
Oh, okay.
And all these additional amenities are plastic free.
Okay.
So everything's in stone paper, there's no plastic there.
And the furniture in here, what about all of that? Was that taken into consideration?
No,
with
it
the
wasn't,
carbon footprint?
because we are actually, in terms of the building, we're not the owner of the asset.
Okay.
So that could be considered, I would say, rather in a new build to say what do we do there, and that's more for
I see. Yeah.
the owner's responsibility. So what we are doing is the operational Scope 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. So when you walk in, you'll be staying in a net zero hotel, no fossil fuels being used, in the power and everything else as far as you can go. Scope 3 food is be reduced as far as possible.
Yes.
Basically.
Food. Amenities. Food is 59% of our footprint.
Wow, 59
Of Scope 3.
of Scope 3. Yeah.
Yes. 59%. Amenities is 6.
As in soaps,
Soaps, everything, bathroom amenities
products,
is
things
6.
like that. Yeah.
Disposables is also 6 or 7. And then you have laundry, which is 8. And those are big categories. And then waste.
Mm.
And then the rest is a bit of commuting
Yes.
and all the back and forth, the extra factors you need to have as part of carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Scope 3 because of energy trends.
But when you break it down like that, it sounds quite simple, but really Scope 3 isn't that simple, because each part of Scope 3 has got a supplier, and they make things in different ways, and they've got their own emissions, and so it's a lot to it's challenging. And how do you face that?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, and it's important to also go back to suppliers and let them know of the progress that we want to make and get them on board as our national suppliers as well. So a lot of them have provided information up till now on their sustainability programmes, which we can share quite happily, and they're quite keen as well to do that. With food, it's still a bit of a work in progress, sourcing suppliers and getting them on board with what does it mean to be part of a supply chain into a net zero hotel. So it's a work in progress still.
Yeah. Yeah. This is meant to be the future, isn't it? Actually, it's like it's policies now.
But that's what we say. We bring the future forward. That's where everybody and the whole sector needs to transform to. What we are doing is proving that it can be done in a conversion context and being verified, because that is also a portion that is essential. It's not just Radisson saying this. It's being verified against the methodology, which is important to prove that all the aspects have been taken into consideration. And with our key suppliers, as I was saying, laundry, amenities, waste, disposables, those are the key categories, and food and beverage, of course, 59%. These are, we've had conversations, and this is the start of a journey. So we're doing everything we can right now on NetZero, for example, menu curation, so that the footprint of the menus come down, of the buffets come down, but we will continue to work with all these suppliers. Take laundry, it's not that easy to have a fossil fuel-free laundry.
It's very intensive work.
It's very intense in energy use, so we do what we can with them now, but we're in a partnership there to say, okay, what are you doing next? What is your program? How do you measure accurately? How do we see the impact of the decisions we're taking together? For example, they're already plastic-free in the delivery. They're not wrapping everything they're doing in plastic. Those things are good, but it creates also on their side a lot of awareness of, now we are, to your point, delivering to a net zero hotel. What do we need to do? How can Radisson be a partner in this? How do we advise each other? How do we measure going forward to take the next steps?
So if you were a laundry company and you're supplying somewhere like this for many years, and then they turn around and they're like, oh, we're going to be net zero. And then as a laundry company, you're like, oh, what does that mean for me? And they're thinking, maybe we need to start thinking about, how much gas we use, or because we want to survive as a business. Are other hotels going to do this? Is that sort of how things are going?
It's certainly created a lot of awareness, and I think we can also learn from the different net zero hotels. For example, our laundry supplier in Oslo, which is the other verified net zero hotel that we're launching, is actually has been doing quite some investments also in decarbonizing their actual energy use. So we are also hoping to create like a community of suppliers who can exchange best practices.
But if your laundry provider is using gas, how does that come into the equation of being a net zero hotel?
It comes into the equation because we reduce whatever we can. We talked about energy being fully renewable, so no footprint. In scope 3, which is food and beverage, laundry, disposables, and amenities, main categories, we reduce as much as we can, and we remove the rest through compensation. So there is still, and it's allowed in the methodology, to have a portion of carbon compensation.
As in like carbon credits type
like
thing?
Carbon credits, correct. But we are doing this with nature-based carbon credits.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And nature-based carbon credits that are based on removal.
Not avoidance.
Not avoidance.
So when you think about this, do you start, if you were starting from scratch, do you start with scope 1 and you're like, okay, let's look at what we are using energy-wise. Yeah. Then you're like scope 2, and then you go to scope 3? Do you do it in that order?
We have other candidate hotels that we know could do this. We have a list of at least 5.
Are you talking to them already?
Well, we need the cases kind of technically lined up specifically for scope 1 and 2. Yeah. Sorry.
And I guess they'll be looking at this hotel.
Everybody will be looking at this one and the future Radisson Red Net Zero.
What will they be looking for? Is the hotel profitable? Is it making a loss? Is it more expensive? What will they be looking at? We
will track as a business the business case of what it means to do Net Zero, both from an investment point of view. We talked about the investment of electrification.
Yes.
We will talk about the operational costs. For example, the fact that we are partnering with other suppliers. But the point is, so we start with the business case on the investment, on the extra costs, because we will have costs of, for example, partnering with Clean World to create this closed loop on amenities. We will have more costs of our food ingredients because we're changing the menu to ingredients that are better for the planet, but they also have an additional cost. We know we will generate, or we hope to be generating, a higher ADR, so higher occupancy, higher conversion, higher rate, through the fact that this is a net zero hotel. And we're going to bring all that together, and guest satisfaction, let's not forget that, into a business case. And that business case will then be presented to other hotels, owners, in a managed context, in a franchise context. We're not excluding this or making this exclusive to only leased hotels. It can be any hotel.
But you're confident this is going to be a success?
I'm very
in
confident.
All those areas.
Are you confident?
I'm confident.
We're happy.
It doesn't look anything different from a non-net zero hotel. It looks this. I mean, it's a very lovely hotel. It's got the Scandinavian features.
Yeah.
It's not actually. Because some people might think, what's going to be different when I go in?
That's why we explain it always in three things. It's very technical, right? So if you're measuring Scope 3 and all that we just talked about, it's technical. But we need to bring this to the guests and frankly to the teams also in an understandable way.
Yes, yeah.
And we say three things. It's 100% renewable energy, it's a minimal waste hotel, and you've got low carbon menus.
Inge and Kevin told me this hotel is using a system called eSmiley to manage food waste. It's essentially a smart waste bin that weighs discarded food, from guest plate scraps to vegetable peels in the kitchen, and then uses a methodology to calculate the resulting CO2 emissions.
So this is the unit here, so you can see they're weighing this from this morning.
Yeah.
We did actually keep one plate just so you could see it.
Oh, thank you.
So that takes us up to 3.05 kilo. And then all we would do there is just register that. Equal to nearly 14 Big Macs.
And so we can be smarter about buffet waste.
Yeah.
We will learn from that. The chefs will analyze it. And then they will adjust. And it's already, we've tested eSmiley in a number of operational hotels. And it's already led to double-digit food waste reduction.
Wow.
So it's really something that helps to create awareness.
It's calculating here a figure on CO2 somehow.
Or cost also. CO2 and cost.
Yeah.
1/3, it's been written about that. 1/3 of all food is wasted.
I know.
And if that were a country, it's like the number 5 biggest emitter in the world. So we should do all we can to reduce food waste, because food is 59% of our Scope 3. You want to have a look at the menu?
Yeah, sure, let's have a look.
Next, we went to the restaurant where the menu has been redesigned to include climate impact labels for each meal.
Partnered with a partner called Klimato. They are out of Sweden, and what they are experts in is the data on carbon of ingredients and menus. Carbon footprint fully calculated and labeled. So they label the good light carbon footprint menu options as A, and it goes all the way to E with the ones that are not good for the planet and have a high footprint. And then we curated the menu together with the team and together with our area chef to have, in this case, just 2 items that are E, and everything else is A, B, and a bit of C.
It's the first graded menu that we've had, carbon graded menu that we've had, so it's a good starting point to work from. And then how does that evolve over the next 6 months?
Yeah.
So overall, in all our hotels, 30%, anywhere in the Radisson Hotel Group hotels, 30% of the choices in the menu are already plant-based, always. But this takes it a step further. For example, for the burger, that's an E, because anything that has meat in it is very bad for
beef.
Carbon and for the planet, especially beef. But you have a vegan alternative, so maybe we can bring people, when they compare the 2 carbon options, to also choose a tasty vegan burger.
And when you start adding in layers like this in the calculations, does it drive up the cost of the menu?
I think in the short answer, for me, no. I think there's actually quite competitive pricing in there. Again, if I think about it historically, what I thought would happen with menu prices didn't actually quite happen. Maybe my reservations on certain products being more expensive because of what they are. It turned out to not be quite true. So the menu is still priced competitively, and some items are actually, I think, very well priced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the prices, and it doesn't look that much different from a normal menu that you would find in most places, to be honest, for some of the items on the menu that I'm seeing. But I was just wondering if, when you start working with third-party companies, there's obviously costs involved in bringing them on board, and then also, sourcing more ingredients and
whatever you need to do to try and...
A lot of the products that are within the menus, for example, the mushroom steak, was already on our purchasing list. We just weren't utilising it at the time. So these products were already available within our nominated suppliers, but probably weren't getting highlighted to us over the past 12 months, 24 months. So I think it's just, again, it's about bringing them on the journey and then them sharing what products they actually have that could suit this concept.
Well, good old British classic fish and chips is a B, so it's not too bad.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Everybody, no need to worry. Fish and chips
It's about using sustainably sourced fish as well.
Yeah. But what I'm wondering is, for like other hotel business owners and so on, is that, why do we not see this in more hotels? Like in the UK, for example, if you can do it here, why can't we do it everywhere? Is it because it's more expensive, it takes longer, or what is actually going on?
I think it's part of innovative partners coming to the market. Like, because we steered this verified net zero project from our headquarters, we kind of know what's out there, and we went to find eSmiley, we went to find Climato, and bring them all together here. Hopefully we'll see an acceleration. Well, there's no competition in saving the planet, so if this gets taken up widely, that's fine.
How do you balance the information? Because some people worry about giving too much information.
It will be very visible because it's the hotel name, it's every room type name when you book. So it will be called NetZero standard room, NetZero family room, NetZero suite, NetZero. So people will know for sure, and we will thank them throughout the booking experience that they're staying at a verified NetZero hotel.
And you think that people will understand what NetZero means in the first time they see it?
Well, we will explain always based on these three pillars. For leisure guests, for the marketing, it's always based on these three pillars. 100% renewable energy, minimal waste hotel, and low carbon menus. And we repeat that over and over. And all the touch points will have that. We looked at the whole guest experience together. We looked at every touch point. We said, how do we communicate that?
After seeing all of this, I couldn't help but wonder, why isn't Radisson doing this to all of their hotels?
We looked in our lease portfolio, which of the hotels were being converted, rebranded, so where major works were going on. And then we looked at, can we actually reduce the energy footprint, scope 1, scope 2, to zero? Can we do that? Because that's a requirement of the SBTI, actually minimum 90% reduction. And so that's how we identified both the Manchester hotel, that's going to be a Radisson, and the Oslo hotel, that's going to be a Red. We have other hotels lined up because doing that decarbonization of scope 1 and 2 is the first step. If you can't do that by investing, you can never make it a verified net zero hotel. And then the scope 3, we did a lot of learnings. I think we can replicate those learnings in many other hotels. That can be done in any hotel.
And what stops that 1 and 2? What's the barriers?
For example, there are places, let's say, for example, that are on district heating. Germany is big on district heating, some places even district cooling, which means done by the city or the locality where you are, which actually is not sustainable. Some places it is, like Oslo, but in some places it's not. And if you then want to take a hotel that is a major, iconic, big hotel, 400-500 room hotel off gas, you need to do massive investments in electrification. You need to have the roof space. So there are places where this is going to be a big hurdle. And then we will start to look into innovative ways of getting heat from other sources. So we are looking into innovation as well. We have a list of other hotels who are actually very sustainable, have very low energy use intensity, so how much energy they use. So we have a list of hotels lined up that could actually become part of verified net zero when this becomes a program.
Radisson customers, are they asking for this?
We have a number of hotels that are on an operational eco-label certification. We have made all our Radisson meetings worldwide carbon compensated for many years. And that's all about making it easy for the guests. The guests doesn't need to do anything. And here we're at the pinnacle of that. So are the guests asking for it? I think yes. Do we need to make it easy to make sure that they actually make the choice for these sustainable hotels? Yes. And are we going one step further? Yes, with verified net zero hotels.
And was it quite a big thing to get signed off that the hotel's actually going to have net zero in the title?
Yes.
How did you get the CEO or whoever had to sign that off to be like, all right, let's do it?
It's actually a collaboration. This project touches all the departments as it should in a net zero transformation. And we have our revenue teams heavily involved, our brand teams heavily involved. And we have the benefit that our CEO comes from a marketing and branding background. His background is with Procter & Gamble, so he's really into branding and marketing. So in the end, we could bring it all together, and it's going to be part of it.
When do you think, as someone who's like you, who's so involved in sustainability and you're sitting on different boards and things, that this will become the standard for all new hotels or conversions going forward?
Well, in the European Union, there's already a directive on this, that as of 2030, all new commercial buildings need to comply with a decarbonization pathway. There's also a very good tool in the European Union to see where your building is and what you need to do by when to decarbonize. Personally, I think 2030 will be a big moment and a wake-up call for many, many businesses, because we all, including Radisson, have an SBTI, so a science-based decarbonization path. In our case, it says we need to reduce our carbon footprint, Scope 1, Scope 2, by 46% compared to 2019.
And do you think...
We're on the trajectory.
Okay.
It's going to be a challenge to get there, I can tell you now, because that includes our managed properties globally, Scope 1 and 2. For many businesses, 2030 will be a pivotal moment. And I think we will see, at least from our side, a lot of projects and acceleration and push. But that's going to be the moment when everybody's going to know, are we there? Are we not there? And what do we need from the regulators to push even more?
What do you think has to change to make this the norm?
I think, of course, we need to think globally. We're a global company. We have massive growth in our footprint. We are 256,000 rooms across the globe. A lot of them are in emerging markets. So the regulatory framework is, of course, very different between mature and emerging markets. Personally, I think, and I hope there will be more of a regulatory push to have more green buildings, because in the end that's also good for the wellness of the people who use the health of the people who use the buildings. Energy efficient buildings are good for the general experience, but also I think the finance community is what's going to unlock a lot of this. Access to financing in emerging markets to do decarbonization projects is what's missing.
Yeah, green bonds, green, just like,
favoring
investment.
and just as a default, saying, okay, you have a decarbonization plan for this building, you're building your project in line with decarbonization standards, or you're making it future-proof like we're doing here. Well, to finance that building, whether it's a new build or a big conversion, on the ticket sizes needed for hotels, so on the investment amounts needed for hotels, that needs to be the default. Because programs exist, don't get me wrong. Programs exist by development banks and institutions like the IFC and the European Investment Bank. It exists, but the ticket size, the volume of investment needed is too high to treat the individual projects that we have with owners around the world.
So that's the key. That's the key that we need. That's the thing we need more work on.
If I could do anything, is have a magic wand to unlock that financing, because we know what needs to be done. We have actually projects that are ready to happen, but financing is an issue.
What do you think's still holding people back?
What I would say is, in general, the hotel industry is misunderstood and not loved enough by the finance community in that sense. The fact that from the development institutions they have programs, but for example in a country like India, they literally, I'm not going to say which development institution it is, but they literally told me, we'll go into commercial real estate, warehousing, because the impact we can have, the investment money we need to put up is higher, and for them that's more efficient than looking at hotels. So it make our sector more loved in a way and understood in the finance community is what needs to happen. And that's our role as Radisson Hotel Group towards asset owners, is to also say, listen, we are the expert partner. We can advise you. We have our own standards. We know how to do a building certification. We know how to do a BREEAM, a LEED, an EDGE in emerging markets. We have our own guidelines that bring you to that level. If you don't want to certify, can bring you to that level. We are experts. We can give you that expertise. The thing that makes it happen then is the financing. And we all know that building hotels these days with the interest rates is actually more expensive, and the interest rates increasing. So it's a bigger conversation to be had.
In my mind, this project shows that building a NetZero hotel could be technically possible. But it's interesting what Inge said about finance. It sounds like we're just not quite there yet. With regulations around building emissions coming in, time will tell what businesses will do when net zero just isn't an option, but a requirement. Thank you for listening to GreenShift, the climate podcast from Skift. We are a brand new podcast, so please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any ideas for future topics around travel and climate, please email me at dg@skift.com. And a quick disclaimer about Skift's climate coverage. This has been made possible through the financial support of Intrepid Travel. The backing allows us to bring high-quality climate journalism. Intrepid is not involved in any decisions made by Skift's editorial team.